System initializing. Identifying subject. Subject identified. Prentice Moore. Male, 22 years old. Status, unsure about future. Identity discovery required. Analyzing medical records. Locator activated. Last known location. Subject on the move. Location identified.
So here's how I see what we're doing. We're on a journey of discovery, right? And we're looking at it one piece at a time. One piece at a time. So it's kind of like if you have Legos. I actually had a Lego set I was going to bring up here, and then I realized it was too small. Like it was only this big, so it would lose the effect, so I didn't bring it. But imagine you have a Lego piece or a Lego kit, and you roll all the Legos out on the table, and you pick one up, and just one piece doesn't really do it for you, right? I mean, it may have a cool color, it may have a little edge to it, but with just one piece, it's not enough. But then you take those pieces and you start putting them together using the instruction manual. Yeah, the Bible, you thought it. And you start putting it together, and all of a sudden it starts to take some shape, right? And you go, I could do it. I can make it look like the box. You don't have a box, well, you have Jesus as the box. Actually, this is getting better as I go. So you got the box, and you're looking at the picture, and you're piecing it together. And what you realize is just one piece alone isn't enough. But when you put those pieces together, you have a masterpiece, or a Lego set, however you want to look at it. Wow. The point is, that was good, right? What I'm trying to say to you is, each night, as we're looking at a different piece, you might get to one piece of one night, one piece, and you might go, I don't know if I like being a potter. I don't know, I'm not sure. But as you begin to put these pieces side by side, or build the little Lego set of your life, you're going to discover, man, God has wired you in a way that you probably never saw coming, and it is beautiful. And so that's what we're doing. So every night is kind of its own little thing as we discover more and more about who we are and how God's wired us. Proverbs 19:21 says this: you can make many plans, but the Lord's purpose will prevail. Let me translate that to you for what we're trying to do right here. You can decide that you want to be this, and you can try to make this, whatever that is, happen, or you can surrender to what the Lord has created you to do and how He has wired you. You can embrace it, and you can walk in it, and I'm telling you, you will go so much further because you're walking in what God has created you to be. This is the key. A lot of people want to be this or be that or look like this, or I wish I was a lion. In fact, I'm going to pick on Amanda because she's not here. Amanda Tadlock, when we first did this years ago, she took the test of the personality, and she got that she was a beaver. But she didn't like that. So she said, I'm a lion. And she spent months, don't tell her I said this, Joe. She spent months trying to convince people that she was a lion. But what we realized was that that's what made her a beaver. It's because she spent all the time trying to, I'm just kidding, don't tell her I said that. But the point is, we can try to be other things, but when we embrace what and who we are, it changes everything. And now she is walking in this identity, this picture of her, this offshoot of her identity, and it makes sense. She's good at it. So are you beavers, you're special. You're special. Now, tonight, we're going to embark on a new journey, on a new piece of the puzzle. And it's your birth order. And we're going to look at how this has implications on who you are, how you act, how you think about people. It affects all of it. And so again, you got to remember, these two things are separate, but when we put them side by side, we're going to see some really cool things. So, let's begin with this. A couple of thoughts as we get started. First, this isn't a theological thing I'm presenting to you tonight. This is more of a psychological thing. Okay? It's a psychology thing. So I want you to understand that. But we can look in the scriptures and we can see right off the bat how this played out. How many of you remember Cain and Abel? Right? They loved each other. right? They got along so well, right? How did that end for them? No, it was the opposite. They despised each other. Well, one did. They were so opposite. They were so different that it caused so much trouble that eventually they killed each other. Now, don't ever kill your sibling. I'm not saying that. But you can see how our birth order, where we come in the line, we can immediately see that you're typically different than your siblings. They're not like you, and you're not like them. Now, we're going to see how God uses this for part of his design, but we can see even in the beginning of the scriptures that right off the bat, we saw this play out with the first siblings that came into the picture. Another note I want to make before we begin is that there are going to be some exceptions that we're going to look at the end. So you may look at this particular some of the list and you're going to go, well, I'm maybe 3 or 4 of those, but I'm not all of them, and I'm going to show you how some of these exceptions will play into you and it'll help you to make more sense. So just make a note of that as you're going through. Don't get frustrated. But I want to point this out, and this is the key. We're looking at tendencies, not guarantees. Okay? We're looking at tendencies, not guarantees. Really, this is true for what we did the last 2 weeks as well. This is what it tends to look like if you're a lion last week, if you're a beaver, otter, golden retriever. This is what it's going to tend to look like if you're a firstborn, a secondborn, or a lastborn. These are the tendencies. Okay, so with that being said, the last piece, there are some great, incredible traits that you're going to have in your birth order, and there's a dark side. There's a dark side. So every one of us fall into this category in some way, and it's going to be awesome. All right, are you ready? All right, raise your hand if you are the firstborn in your family.
Woo!
Yes, you can put your hands out. Now, again, you already see it. There's just a divide of what happens. It's crazy. Okay, now listen. Take a vote. How many of you think I'm a firstborn? Raise your hand. Think I'm a firstborn? No, they're so unsure about their lives. It's okay. It's just a test, and you failed miserably. 6 of you got it right. I'm a firstborn. I'm a firstborn. The greatest. Just kidding. I always try to be unbiased with all of these as they unfold into my life. Okay, so let's look at this. All right, so let's talk about firstborn children. First thing you want to see, firstborn, you're on the throne. Okay, what does that mean? You're not really a king, but in your house, you're kind of King Kong or Queen Kong. When you come on the scene, it's all about you, right? Mama, daddy, everything is focused in on you. You are on the throne. So firstborns, you have some incredible traits. You're natural leaders. You're natural leaders. You can be aggressive in a good way. You're a perfectionist. You're dependable. You're organized. You're driven. You take charge and you tend to be more responsible. Let's pause for a minute. Think about this. Why do you think that is? Very good. You take care of those siblings. When they come into the picture, who's mom called? She's already been there, done it with you. She wants you to take over now. You're going to raise little brother, little sister. You're going to watch them. You're going to tell them not to do this and not to do that. You're going to go play with them. And so you learn, one, how to take charge, but you also tend to be more responsible because you have responsibility laid on you sooner. So firstborns, we begin to see some of this. You also, though, you have really high standards. Where are my firstborns at again? And isn't it frustrating that then the little ones come behind, they got all their own set of rules? That's 1/3 of what you had to deal with. And you got, right, everything was laid on you. You had to get on lanes, you had to be home at 6:30. It was tough, right? That's why you're better. All right, I'm just kidding. It makes sense though, doesn't it? It makes sense. By the way, just so you know, it's for your firstborns, I said this to myself so you can learn and remember that your parents, yeah, they had to learn with you. And you're all going to learn that when you have kids, you're going to have to learn with that firstborn kid. There's a lot of things you just don't know yet. You got to figure it out. And so as firstborns, it tends to aid us because we go through that. But nonetheless, it helps us to understand a little bit about how we are, isn't it? A little bit about how we are. Now, who are some famous firstborns? This is always helpful. Clint Eastwood. He was a firstborn. See up there? Oh. That was my fault. I went out of it. Don't worry about it. Let's start with Clint Eastwood. Clint Eastwood back. We'll get to Bush. Don't worry. Clint Eastwood's a firstborn. How many know who Clint Eastwood is? He was a famous actor, right? And then what happened? What happened? I'll tell you what happened. Clint Eastwood got sick of listening to other directors, so he took charge and started to direct his own movies. This is typical firstborn. I'm sick of listening to y'all tell me what to do. I'm going to do my own movie. And they're going to be great. By the way, I think this new one he's about to do, that the one with the guys, the soldiers, is going to be really cool. Clint Eastwood was the firstborn. Let's go to the next one. You ready to go next? George Bush. George Bush. Now, it doesn't matter what you think about George Bush. It's irrelevant. George Bush is a good guy, though. George Bush was the firstborn. By the way, more than half of the U.S. presidents were firstborns. More than half U.S. presidents were firstborns. This is good. Is Donald J. Trump a firstborn? Anybody want to guess? Raise your hand if you think he is. He's not a firstborn. Donald J. Trump's a fourthborn. Fourthborn. It explains a lot. It will when we get to it. Trust me, it's going to explain a lot. Remind me to bring that up when we get to the last one. Okay, let's keep going. Who else? Chuck Norris. That's right, baby. My mom used to call him Chucky Baby. I'm still traumatized by that. Keep going. Sylvester Stallone. Keep going. Angelina Jolie. These are all firstborns. Is that the last one? These are all firstborns. And guess what? All three of those, they started directing their own movies later on in their career. So what do we see? Firstborns love to take charge. Firstborns tend to be more responsible. They tend to be more aggressive, which is a good thing in the right settings. But like all, there's a dark side. Here's your dark side, firstborns. There's a lot of you here. You think you're always right. That's right. Because the siblings couldn't say anything. You were always right. The toy goes there. No, yes, it does. Okay, it does. All right, you'll beat me up. You're always right. You think you are. You can be insensitive. You can be very insensitive. You can run people over. You tend to criticize. You hate lack of order. And you tend to worry and can be very impatient. Now let's pause here for a minute. This is a dark side. When we say dark side, this doesn't mean you're a bad person. What this means is these tendencies are things you've got to be careful of. By the way, if you're a firstborn lion, any firstborn lions? Yeah. It's tough. Let me tell you. It's tough. Sensitivity just doesn't even operate in your being. You got to be so careful. You got to know how you're wired. Listen, you're so valuable because you're the people that are like, if no one's going to lead, I got this. Let's go. Follow me. But you will run people over along the way. So when you mix these two together, it's interesting. So firstborns, it's important you understand. Firstborns are approval-seeking missiles. Approval-seeking missiles. You can tweet that. I think Twitter died, but you can still tweet it. Approval-seeking missiles. Why? Because you had the celebration of everything you did. He took his first breath. He took his first step. He said his first cry. He did whatever else you do. Everything you did was celebrated because it was the first. And your parents were so excited. And the second born comes and they're like, okay. Right? I mean, it's just, so you tend to be approval-seeking missiles because you were wired there. They just celebrated you. You got to understand this about yourself as firstborns. And also, because you spent alone time with your parents, depending on how long this will be more prevalent or not, but because you had alone time with your parents and then someone else came into the picture, you're going to tend to have some jealousy issues, and you're going to have some emotional intensity that flares up. Because you had something and then it changed. Firstborns like order. They don't like lack of order. And so you got to understand some of this dark side. Here's the key note. This isn't on the screen. You can write this down. Firstborns are capable of highly successful marriages and lives. Okay? What is this? Yeah, you can clap again. Here's what this means. Your life will be very pointed, very focused, and because of that, you tend to be more successful. Most of your prime roles of lawyers and doctors come from firstborns. Okay? So this is important to note. The other thing is you tend to have successful marriages. Now listen, we're not talking about divorce versus not divorce. We talk about your marriage accomplished things. So two otters get married. They're not worried about necessarily accomplishing a bunch of tasks, but two firstborns that get married, like my wife and I, we're on mission all the time. Our marriage is just an extension of our ministry. Now we're just doing it together. And so we're constantly looking to do this and do that. We naturally have a more successful marriage. Again, note, it's not necessarily divorce versus not divorce. It's what accomplishes within the marriage because there's a drive between these two individuals. individuals. And so if you're looking to have a successful marriage, you need to look to marry a firstborn. Now let's talk about the secondborn. The dethroner. Man, the firstborn had it made for a whole 12 months. And then the secondborn came and whoop, out with the old, in with the new. How many secondborns do we have? Raise your hand. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Let me talk to you for a minute. Let me bring you down to earth. Let's talk about the good. Let's talk about some good traits. Here's something, I like the word incredible. I think it builds us up a little bit. Here's some incredible traits. You're very cooperative. You're very cooperative. You're sociable. You're peacemakers. You're trustworthy and you're great negotiators. Now let's pause here and think about this. Why are you great negotiators? Well, for those of you that are secondborn that had the kid follow, you constantly had this battle between your firstborn brother or sister who are always on mission, and then your lastborn who was just always having fun. And so, and they were always going after each other because they just couldn't get along. And you just found yourself in the middle. You're always in the middle. And so you tend to be very social and you tend to be great negotiators. Now here's what happens with being social though. Because there's this weird divide between your family where you're caught in the middle, you tend to choose friends over family. You tend to lean toward those friends and they become your rock. That's one of the challenges. We'll get to the dark side in a minute, but that's just one of the things that naturally comes out for the secondborns. Your friends fill that lack of void. So let's look at some famous secondborns real quick. Martin Luther King. What did he do? What did he do? Peace and unity. Right? He was standing in the gap, trying to bridge it, trying to make sense of it. What did he do? He made radical change. Number 2, Princess Diana. You may not be as familiar with her. Another one of those. Standing in the gap. You're great, not just negotiators, you are great peacemakers. You find yourself in the middle, and if you know and understand that, you can use it to your benefit. It's incredible. Do you know? Did you know? I want to know if you knew this. You're capable of the most meaningful relationships and marriages. The most meaningful. You're honest, down to earth, sociable, peaceful. Man, you make things. So your relationship with your friends. So listen, if you want good friends, you want loyal friends, you need to find some secondborns and bring them into your camp. They'll make the best friends. They're great at this. It's fantastic. Now, there's a dark side. And I talk about the second part, I think of my brother. He is the spinning image of all these things, including the dark side. So let's look at this. Because you feel left out, you tend to be rebellious. All right? That attention didn't quite always come, so some of you are like, well, not really. That's exactly. You're negotiating where you stand on that rebellion scale. You can be secretive. Because you're caught in the middle, you don't get the attention of the first or the third. Sometimes you can tend to be secretive. You need to understand that about yourself. What does that mean? You don't open up enough. Probably to a point where that could really hurt you down the road, or maybe even now if you're not careful. You pick friends over family. That's not always bad. In real life, we want our family to be close to us. So when you're picking friends over family, it could be bad. You fail to admit that you need help. Part of that's secretive. Very, very important. And you often can hide your real feelings. So let's go back to Cain and Abel for just a minute. What happened? There was separation. One offering was accepted. One offering was not. Couldn't handle it. Didn't like it. We got a problem within the siblings. This is what happens. We're all a little bit different. And when we don't understand, some of you are like, if I'd known this, I might not have beat my little brother up as much, right? Or I might not have hated my older brother so much because I would have understood this is just kind of how it came together. So it's very, very helpful for us to know this. Okay, let's move to the lastborn. How many of you are thirdborns? Fourthborns. Anybody past fourthborn? Any fifthborns? Okay, I'm going to get you all at the end. I got something special for you. I got something special for you. All right, thirdborns, one more time. All right, there's a lot less of y'all. Here's why. If firstborns rule the world, then the lastborns want to change it. That's right. That's right. Listen, lastborns, here's the good thing. And this could be thirdborn, fourthborn, third or fourthborn, whichever one was last. This is you, okay? If you're a thirdborn, if you're a fourthborn, you just amplified the thirdborn, but you're both in the same category. Here's the thing, couple good things. You're charming, you're likable. Is that true? Yeah, right? You're creative. You have that free spirit. Firstborns are always clean shaven, always clean dressed. Thirdborns, let the beard grow a little bit, right? The clothes, as long as they fit, it's all good, right? You got this free spirit. I love to use this illustration. I don't know how familiar you are with the kids, but our pastor, Dr. Young, he's got 3 sons. And he's got Ed and Ben are his 2 oldest. Ed's the oldest, and Ben's the second one. And then you have Cliff. And I'll describe it like this, because Ed and Ben, very similar, always well-dressed, always sharp. They're communicators, they're pastors. And then you have Cliff, who's a musician. He's got the beard, he's always in sandals and jeans and a tee, and you just put them up. You got the whole family, and then there's Cliff. You're like, what happened? It's just something different about the thirdborn, the lastborn. There's a free spirit. He's the most creative. He's a musician. He was one of the lead singers for Caveman's Call. I mean, he did it, but it's just 2 different worlds, right? Totally different. And so you lastborns, you thirdborns, fourthborns, you got to understand, there's some goodness. There's a free spirit about you. You got no hidden agenda. You're people-oriented. In fact, you are the #1 car salesman. You're welcome. You are welcome. And just sales in general. You're great. Why? Why? Because you know how to connect, man. You were the third. You were you were on your own. You had to make your own way. And so what you do, you just connect with people. And so you make great salesmen. I don't know if that's encouraging to you or not. Here's the reality for the lastborns, though. Your parents, to be honest, they've been there, done that. They have been there, done that. The standards that were once set for Chad were not set for Bethany. The expectation that was for Chad didn't even exist when Bethany came into the picture. And some of you know what I'm talking about. And you loved it. It was great. Like, oh, remember when you had to do that? Yeah, I'll see you later. I'll be home at midnight. You had to come home at 5. Sucker. I mean, your life was just different. Why? Because your parents been there, done that. When the firstborn comes, man, your parents got the video camera out, and they're taking pictures, and they're marking every moment. Your first step, your toe move, they're taking pictures. Thirdborn comes, I don't even know where the camera is. It's broken, but it's all right. We'll remember somehow. We'll remember. It's okay. We've been there, done that. When the firstborn got his pacifier, and that thing fell on the ground, it went into the decontamination zone. By the thirdborn, they wipe it on the pan, he'll be fine. But they've been there, done that. You're okay. What works with the first and the second, he'll be fine. Trust me. Right? And you get to 4th, I don't even think you had a pacifier. They just gave your finger, right? Just figure it out, bro. You're on your own. Totally different world. Here's some famous lastborns. Been connecting the dots a little bit? Keep going. Keep going. Yeah. Probably not as popular these days, lastborn. Hold it right there. Now look at this. Now I know some of you thirdborns are like, I'm getting offended. Don't compare me to... He is funny. Here's the truth, and this isn't a bad thing, right? These guys, all those guys were highly successful. But man, their personalities are polar opposite, right? Man, we begin to learn about ourselves, it's a little different. You're going to be parents one day, by the way. Just a side note, some people are like, your pin just dropped and you're trying to talk about that tonight. You're going to be a parent, you need to know this stuff. This is going to be important for you when you start raising kids one day. Some of you need to be 10 years ago, but whatever. When the time comes. Here, before you move on, lastborns are capable of the funnest relationships and marriages. You tend to have the funnest. Right? It doesn't mean it's going to be unsuccessful. Doesn't mean it's not going to be meaningful, but you better believe it's going to be fun. We are going to have a good time. So those, if you want to laugh, right? If you're a little down, or if you're just a firstborn, right, and you need to laugh, you need some thirdborn friends to come around you and just pick you up, make you feel good, make you smile. But like all, the lastborn children have a dark side. You're manipulative. You're flaky. You're flaky. You're flaky. The expectation was low, and so you are low. You didn't even worry about it. Mom didn't tell me to do it. Why would I do it? I don't care. Yeah, Mom, that's an extension. I'm just saying, you're flaky, Bethany. You're spontaneous. She don't listen. It's all right. You were spontaneous. You have decision. You do your decision based on feeling, not always on fact. All right. Firstborn's very factual. They want to know. They want to make that walk. You're just like, feels good. Let's go for it. Let's see what I feel. Jump off the cliff. Let's see how it feels when we're done. You can read these, big ego, undisciplined. Here's another one that's really important. It's not a guarantee, okay? It's not a guarantee, because Donald Trump was a fourth-born, but you tend to be financially irresponsible. You tend to be financially irresponsible. Remember, that's not a guarantee, and that's something that's fixable, but you need to know because of that carefree spirit, you're going to be less willing to save and to plan. You're going to want to enjoy. And so you got to know that about yourself. That's okay. That's not a nod. That's just a great tip for us to understand. So let's go back to Donald J. Trump for a second. Some of you are like, please don't bring him up now. It's mine. Listen, I think it explains a lot. Why he's always saying crazy things. Why? Because of that attention. It's that attention. Third-born, fourth-born, last-born children. You're fighting for attention because they've all gone before. And the truth is, parents love to say, right? They love to say they give all the attention to the last-born. I think they look out for the last-born maybe the most because they're the baby of the family. But the last-born is always striving for attention. They're always fighting for attention, especially if your first-born brother or sister did whatever, was very successful in sports or in theater, and they were constantly traveling, and your parents are constantly with them. You are fighting for attention. So we see this play out. Now, how many of you don't have any siblings? Raise your hand. Only children. Wow. 2 of you. Awesome. I'm about to rock your world. You ready? Here's your good things. Here's your incredible traits. You're a perfectionist. You're going to see some real similarities with the firstborn. You're logical, you're confident, you're ambitious, you thrive for excellence, you want to do things right. You have tremendously high expectations because they were sent from your parents. Listen, there was no other kid to focus on, so it was all on you. It was all on you. Here's the good news for you, though. Because you were around adults, and only adults, you tend to be more mature. You tend to talk more, and you talked quicker in your early years because they were having adult talk with you, right? Your parents goggle you for a little while, and then get bored. They're like, just talk to him like he's normal, okay? Don't catch up. And you do. It's exactly what happens because you have to rise up to having adults around you. You don't have other little kids running around. So you got a lot of good things. There's a couple famous only children, just a couple. Samuel L. Jackson, only child. Driven. Success. I mean, you couldn't name all his movies if you tried. Driven. We have Tommy Lee Jones, another one. Man, I don't know him as much, but he's another one, falls in the category. And the last one, Tiger Woods. Now listen, forget his indiscretions. Just think about him as a player. I watched this guy when he was a kid. On TV. He did 15. He putted 15 balls in a row. Honestly, he was a little guy. He was 10 or 11. I remember watching. I didn't realize it was him until years later. I went back and I remembered it was him. This kid, from the moment he was born, he was an only child, and his parents were pouring into him. Guess what? Arguably, whatever. At one point, he was considered the greatest golfer in the world. Why? He's an only child. There was no other attention given, and he was as driven as they come, and he was not going to quit until he got to the top. So only children, you are successful. You tend to be, at least. Not a guarantee. But you tend to be successful. Like firstborns, you tend to have highly successful relationships and marriages, but you have the dark side. You're self-centered. Why? No one else to share it. It was just you, so it makes sense. You're highly critical. Your parents were critical, so you're going to be critical. You're impatient, and you are always right. With firstborns, they're always right, but with only children, they are always right. Because there is no one else to fight with. No one to tell them no. So you are, in your mind, you are always right. And you're control freaks. Now, who do you get along with? This won't be on the screen. Who do you get along with? Typically, again, it's tendencies, not guarantees. Tendency is going to be firstborns are going to attract other firstborns. You're just going to get each other better. I talk all the time about how, like, y'all loud, fun people, like, I love y'all, but I appreciate it, I need laughter in my life, but I'm gonna draw toward firstborns, and so on. You're gonna tend to draw to those that are similar to you. Again, not always, but that's the tendency. Now let's talk about a few exceptions. This is important. Before we get to the screen, let me say this. What we're doing, all of these things, when you begin to put them together, you begin to see yourself shape and form. So even though you may be a lion, whatever, firstborn, the lion thirdborn, I don't know if that even exists, but the lion thirdborn, you're going to start looking different. You're going to have these traits, but you're going to look different because you've gone down two different paths when you put these two things side by side. And then we're going to account for things we'll talk about in the coming weeks, and you're going to begin to see how you become truly a unique individual. All in good form and fashion, but you become truly a unique individual. Now let's look at this first thing. Here's what you need to know. There is an exception where birth order starts over. Here's what they are. So if there was a 5-year gap between you and your siblings, if you came 5 years later, if you were the oops, and 5 years later, just kidding, sorry. I gotta stop looking at my golden retrievers when I make those jokes that make me feel bad. If there was a 5-year gap, okay, what happens is it starts over. 5 to 6 years, basically you became a firstborn. 5 years, they threw away the clothes, they're starting fresh with you, right? Secondborns, you get hand-me-downs. Lastborn, you get whatever's left of the hand-me-downs. But if there's a 5-year gap, then it all kind of starts over. If there's a gender switch, so if you're a firstborn and then you had a firstborn male, you had a secondborn sister, she essentially became a firstborn and it starts over. Why? Because you can't give the boy clothes to the girl. Right? And girls versus boys, boys versus girls, that's a whole new dynamic. So parents are back bought in, right? 2 boys, you kind of got used to it, you know what it's like. You get a girl and all of a sudden it starts fresh. Everything's pink, the room's changed, you're taking pictures again because it's a girl. That's what we've been waiting for, I'm just kidding. Right? But it begins to make sense. So it starts over if you have a gender switch. And then finally, my 5th-borns, 6th-borns, it starts over. If you are a 5th-born, you are a firstborn. If you are a 6th-born, you are a secondborn. The 5th child, it starts over. Those are very rare. Not a lot of people have 5 or more children, but that's what happens. My wife is the oldest of 7. So at the 5th child, it started over. Okay? Not to mention some different exceptions and things like that. Now there's one other little element here. There's what we call the reverse birth order. What this means is if you have parents that are, for instance, both lions, it's possible, or I'm sorry, both firstborns, if they're both lions, that'd be tough. But if they're both firstborns, what happens is that drive and that expectation can outweigh the kid, basically, and it overwhelms them so much that it forces them to the other extreme. And they can become more like lastborn because they had 2 firstborn parents and they just couldn't take it. So Sarah and I, we're always talking about this. We cannot do that. We don't want to reverse her. We want her to stay the firstborn attributes. So I'm like, then just take it easy on her, right? Let me be the mean one, because it's fun for me, right? You just figure it out. We got to balance it, but we're trying really hard because we don't want Kyla to have I don't want her to act like a lastborn, right? I love the lastborns, but I can't take living with the lastborn. I need more firstborns, right? That's what I want. I'm totally joking with you about it. But this is a reality. So if you have 2 parents that are the same, likewise, if you had 2 lastborn children parents, right? Lastborn parents. Then they may flip you to the lion side. I can't take it. My parents, like, they're always having fun. There's no order in my life. And they might drive to the side. So these are things that could happen. Here's the last little piece, and this is a little bit more serious. All these things, like we said, are tendencies, not guarantees, because stuff happens in life. We talk about divorce. If your parents get divorced, it is possible that this could get turned upside down because your family dynamic has radically changed. Economic status is a big part of this. So like if you grew up with a lot of money, it's possible that your parents had the ability to be home with you more. If your parents were always having to work to make ends meet and they were gone more times than not, then it's possible that could affect what this looks like. So again, it's tendencies, not guarantees. You also have things like death in the family, particularly death of a sibling, can radically change. As you can imagine, the parents will gravitate to the other children in response to that, and so you can see a change or a reversal in this. So these are a couple things that you want to think about. Make sure I didn't leave out any. Stepkids. How many of you have or no, have stepkids? I mean, you might have to. Are you a stepless sibling? You have a step sibling. Okay, I do too. So there's like 18 of us when you put them all together. Feels like that. Step siblings makes it real challenging. If you grew up with them, then you might see these similar traits. But if they came late in life, like mine didn't come until we were basically out of high school, then it wouldn't have the same effect. So all of these things can kind of play with it. But hopefully what you see is a tendency here that you go, okay, this makes sense. I'm beginning to see a little bit about myself that I didn't quite understand. For me, as a lion firstborn, I have great positives and I have great challenges. If I don't understand my challenges and watch my challenges, you won't be here because I would run you all off. I would have no leadership team, I'd have no friends, and I'd probably have no wife because I ran everybody off because I let my lion firstborn connect together and become this super monster, and no one would want to be around me. So it's helpful to understand how these things work with you, but it's also helpful to understand how these work with the people around you. It helps you to understand your friends. It helps you to understand your loved ones. It will help you to understand your spouse. When we understand these things about each other, we are more apt to live in a place of forgiveness and understanding and of grace. And that's the desire of our Lord. Now, some of you, you might look at this and you go, man, I don't know if I like this. I'm not sure. Well, here's what's tough. You didn't get to pick this. Right? You didn't get to go, hey, Mom, could you slide me up in the order? I want to be in the first, but you don't get to pick. And so here's what you need to understand. Romans 8:28. That God works all things for his good, according to his purpose. What you have been given, how you have been crafted, God is taking this and he is going to use it for the glory of him and for your benefit. Part of that process has happened for many of you tonight for the first time. Beginning to look at this and to see this and to understand. Some of you need to call a sibling and just say, hey man, I'm real sorry. I was the firstborn. It makes so much sense now. It was a real joke. By the way, so you know, I've had to do this numerous times with my brother and my sister. As I have grown and matured in my walk with Christ, as I've begun to figure out who I am, I have realized that, man, I was a complete jerk to them when I was growing up. In fact, I'll end with this story so you can all be really sad and think terribly of me. But be honest. When we were growing up, my brother and I, we shared a room together. My brother was the second born, okay? So he was the peacemaker, negotiator. We had the same room, but we separated it by this little, like when you're a kid, a little shelf is like a wall. It's like heavy, you got your own space, and all it was a little shelf. We had this little shelf separating us. And I remember when we first kind of made this move and we got our own space, I remember this is terrible. I wasn't planning to say this. This is never good to do. We're going to bed, and it's, we're falling asleep, and he yells out, I love you. Oh, that's really sweet, right? Well, for me, as an older brother, this firstborn monster, still figuring out who I was, I didn't say anything. I remember just like, why did he say that? That's so weird. Like, brother, what a dork. I remember thinking this, and I'm going, and at that moment, at that time, it didn't make any sense to me. I couldn't get it. And years later, as I figure out more and more about who I am, that memory from years ago when we were kids, that I really shouldn't remember, has never left me. Because what I realize is I have got to understand who I am, or that kind of stuff would continue for the rest of my life. And you need to know these things about yourself so that you can better operate for the glory of God and for his kingdom, but also within the community that he's given us and within your family. And so you know, in case you're wondering, so you don't leave on a terrible note, I always say I love you to him now, but I got to say I love you to him when I gave a speech at his wedding. It was really cool, and so we got to make up for that moment. It was very special, and so all's good, just in case those of you golden retrievers are losing your mind right now, because you don't think you can ever listen to me again. But I say that to you because it is important that you understand these things about you, okay? The last thing I want to say to you is, I want you to be confident in who you are. We live in a world, guys, we talked about this at the beginning a couple weeks ago. Man, Satan wants nothing more to do than to just mess with your identity. He wants to mess with who you are. He wants to mess with how you think about yourself. He wants to mess with how you think about other people. We have got to be in a season of grace, and I want you to know who you are so that you can walk in confidently. What's the first thing you are? You are a child of God if you're a believer in Christ. that can't be changed or taken away. That is the most important thing. You need to hear this. You are a child of God. No matter what anybody says about you, whatever they think about you, no matter how they look at you, all of that stuff is irrelevant. The only thing that matters in your life is that you are a son or daughter of God. That will never leave you. It will never abandon you. No matter how hard life gets, God is never going to leave you on your own. You are His, and He is yours. You are a child of God. That is your identity. Our identity is what? In something that cannot be lost or taken away. And I know there's some of us in here, we are still walking in this thing, and we're caught up in things that don't matter. We're putting our identity in things that don't matter, and they're letting us down. You are a child of God. It is the only identity that you need to have. And it's the only identity that will never let you down. Once you understand your identity, now I can say it to you, but you got to process it. You got to believe it. You got to get right with the Lord first to step into that, by the way. But once you get that right, once you realize that your purpose is linked to your identity, and if your identity is in Christ, then your purpose comes from Christ. Then we step into this new world where we say, okay, now I don't have to decide what my purpose is. I get to discover it because God has given it to me. And that's what's happening here. So I want you to walk confidently as you go through life. Look, this whole week, I have been exposed for being a lion firstborn. I feel like everywhere I go, I'm just like, I'm a jerk. Why did I say that? Why was it on Sunday? I forget, I don't know if you were here. I picked on something that was sitting on the table on Sunday morning. Bob was like, I came like, bro, what the heck? Why are you sitting on the table? Get off the table. And everyone's like, what's wrong with you? And I'm like, let me try it again. I walked out and I came back. I tried to be a golden retriever. It didn't work, but I tried. I'm finding all these areas, but here's the thing. When you find these areas, you know what you realize? There's some relationships that you could make better. There's some connections with people that could be better. It may even be within your own home. With your parents, or maybe with your roommates, or whatever it is. And so I hope that this is helping you guys, and I hope you're embracing it. I want you to leave here confident who you are. And if you're a lion, be a lion when we need you to be a lion, that's great. If you're a firstborn, that's fantastic. You know what's good about you, you know what you need to be careful. If you're a lastborn, man, you are the life that we need. It's great. Just try to be responsible and all that. And if you're a middle child, listen, you make the best friends because you are as genuine as they come. And you're as real as they come. That's simple. We need that. Know who you are and walk confidently in that. Next week we got another one.